When we left the tea house, the sun was already beginning to set. The streets of Kunming were covered in a warm golden glow. People walked past us. Some carried vegetables home. Some held hands with their loved ones. Some hurried toward dinner. The world continued moving forward. And so did we. Shen Yanzhou carried my bag in one hand and held my hand with the other. I looked at our shadows stretching across the road. Two figures, side by side. Not one walking ahead. Not one following behind. Just walking together. Shen Yanzhou. When did you decide to wait for me? He thought for a moment. Actually, I never decided. I looked at him. What do you mean? He smiled faintly. Waiting for you was never a decision. It was just something I did. My steps slowed. He continued. Just like breathing. Just like eating. Just like remembering to turn off the lights before leaving home. It became a habit. I lowered my head. My heart ached. Because I suddenly realized, for 5 years, I had been chasing success. But someone had spent 5 years quietly waiting for me to come home. And I almost lost him. The streetlights slowly turned on one by one. The city became brighter. Shen Yanzhou gently pulled my hand. Why are you walking so slowly? I looked at him. Because I want to remember this moment. He smiled. Why remember? Because I don't want to forget. He looked at me with a puzzled expression. Forget what? I held his hand tighter. The feeling of finding you again. He was silent for a moment. Then he raised his other hand and lightly tapped my forehead. Silly. I was never lost. I smiled through my tears. I know, but I lost my way. He stopped walking. The evening breeze passed between us. Then he gently said, Gu Zhaoning. Yes? Welcome back. At that moment, the entire world seemed to become quiet. The noise of the city faded. The footsteps around us disappeared. Only those 3 words remained. Welcome back. Not an accusation. Not a complaint. Not a reminder of everything I had done wrong. Just a simple welcome, as if I had only gone on a long journey. As if he had always left the light on for me. I looked at him and finally understood. Home was never a place. Home was a person who was still willing to open the door when you returned. That night, we walked through the streets of Kunming for a very long time. Neither of us was in a hurry to return to the hotel. The city lights reflected on the wet pavement, creating countless shimmering fragments beneath our feet. The air after the rain was cool and refreshing. For the first time in a long while, I felt my heart become completely quiet. No meetings, no documents, no endless phone calls, no pressure from the company. Only the person beside me. Only this moment. We walked past a small flower shop. The flowers outside had just been washed by the rain, their petals carrying tiny drops of water that sparkled under the streetlights. I suddenly stopped. Shen Yanzhou turned back. What happened? I pointed toward the flowers. Let's buy some. He looked surprised. Flowers? Yes. He smiled. Didn't you say before that flowers were a waste of money? I froze, because I remembered. 5 years ago, he had brought home a bouquet of jasmine flowers. I had just finished a difficult meeting. My mind was full of numbers, contracts, and problems waiting to be solved. He placed the flowers on the table and said, Zhaoning, look, they are blooming beautifully. I had only glanced at them. Then I replied, they will wither eventually. There's no need to spend money on things that cannot last. At that time, I thought I was being practical. I thought I was being rational. But now I realized some things were never valuable because they lasted forever. They were valuable because someone wanted to give them to you. I was wrong before. I looked at him. Can I buy flowers now? He stared at me for a few seconds. Then he smiled. Of course. We walked into the flower shop. The young girl inside greeted us warmly. What kind of flowers would you like? I looked around. Roses, tulips, lilies. Many beautiful flowers filled the room. But in the end, my eyes stopped on a familiar white flower. Jasmine, I said softly. I want jasmine. The girl carefully wrapped the flowers. When she handed them to me, I held them tightly. Shen Yanzhou looked at the bouquet. You know jasmine has a meaning? What meaning? He thought for a moment. Long-lasting love. I lowered my eyes and smiled. Then it's perfect. He looked at me. Perfect? Yes. I held the flowers between us. Because this time, I want to learn how to protect something that matters. He didn't answer, but his eyes softened. On the way back, I carried the jasmine flowers. He carried the luggage, just like many years ago, except everything was different now. Back then, he carried everything for me. The responsibilities, the pressure, the loneliness, and I thought that was normal. Now, I wanted to carry something for him too. When we arrived at the hotel, Shin Yanzhou opened the door. The room was quiet. A small lamp beside the bed gave off a warm glow. I placed the jasmine flowers near the window. The faint fragrance slowly filled the room. He stood behind me and watched silently. "Does it feel strange?" I asked. "What?" "Being here with me again." He was silent for a while. Then he answered honestly, "A little." I turned around. "Why?" "Because I used to imagine this moment many times." His voice became softer. "I imagined you coming to find me. I imagined you saying that you regretted it. I imagined that we would start over." He lowered his eyes. "But after imagining it so many times, I stopped believing it would happen." My heart tightened. I walked toward him. "Shen Yanzhou, I'm sorry you waited so long." He looked at me. "But I am also grateful." "For what?" "For not giving up on yourself." He was stunned. I continued, "You left, not because you stopped loving me. You left because you finally learned to love yourself." A faint smile appeared on his face. "Maybe." "No." I shook my head. "Definitely." I looked at him seriously. "And I am glad you did. Because if you had continued waiting there forever, sacrificing everything for me, I might never have realized how much I had hurt you." The room became quiet. After a while, he walked closer. "Gu Zhaoning." "Yes? Are you tired?" I shook my head. "No. You traveled all this way today. You barely rested." "I'm not tired." I smiled. "Because I finally found you." His eyes moved slightly. Then he reached out and gently touched my hair. "You always know how to say things that make people unable to respond." I laughed. "Is that a compliment?" "Half." "What about the other half?" "The other half means you still need to learn." "Learn what?" He looked at me. "Learn that love isn't something you fix after it breaks. It's something you take care of before it breaks." I nodded slowly. "I will remember." He looked at me. "Don't just remember, do it." I smiled. "Okay, I will do it." Outside the window, the city lights continued shining. The night in Kunming was peaceful. And for the first time after 5 years of marriage, I slept beside him without feeling like I was chasing something. No longer chasing success. No longer chasing approval. No longer chasing a future that I thought would make everyone happy. Because I finally understood. The future I wanted had always been beside me. I just spent too long looking ahead and forgot to look at the person walking with me. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. For a moment, I lay there quietly, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. The sunlight had not yet entered the room. The city outside was still wrapped in silence. Then I turned my head. Shen Yanzhou was sleeping beside me. His breathing was calm and steady. I watched him for a long time. It was a strange feeling. For 5 years, I had slept beside this person. Yet there were so many nights when I was physically close to him, but my heart was somewhere else. I would answer emails while he sat beside me. I would discuss projects during dinner. I would fall asleep while he was still waiting for a conversation that never came. I had always thought that being together meant being in the same place. Only now did I understand. True companionship meant being present, not just appearing. I slowly reached out and adjusted the blanket that had slipped from his shoulder. My movement woke him. His eyelashes moved slightly. Then he opened his eyes. For a second, there was confusion in his gaze. Then he saw me. A small smile appeared. "Why are you looking at me?" I smiled. "Because I want to." He stared at me for a moment. Then he closed his eyes again. "That's dangerous." I was surprised. "Why?" "Because if you keep looking at me like this," his voice was still slightly sleepy, "I might think I am dreaming." My heart softened. "Shen Yanzhou, you really waited for me for a long time." He opened his eyes again. "Yes." He didn't deny it. He didn't pretend it wasn't painful. He simply admitted it. "Was it difficult?" I asked softly. He looked at the ceiling. After a while, he answered, "Yes." My eyes became wet. "But it wasn't always painful." I looked at him. "Why?" "Because I still remembered the good moments." He turned his head toward me. "The first time you made dinner for me, The first time you fell asleep on my shoulder while watching a movie? The first time you called me because you had a fever and said you wanted me to come home? A faint smile appeared on his face. There were many moments when I thought, maybe waiting was worth it. I lowered my eyes. But I also hurt you many times. Yes. His answer was immediate. I froze. He looked at me seriously. You did. I didn't expect him to say it so directly. But then he continued, and I was hurt. But that doesn't mean I hate you. I don't want you to spend the rest of your life punishing yourself. His voice became softer. I don't want a wife who stays with me because she feels guilty. I want Gu Zhaoning, the woman who chooses me because she loves me. My breath stopped for a moment. Those words were simple, but they meant more than any promise. I nodded. I understand. He looked at me. Do you really? Yes. I held his hand. I won't spend the rest of my life trying to repay you, because you are not something I owe. You are someone I love. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he gently squeezed my hand. Good, because I don't want to be your debt. I want to be your family. The sunlight slowly entered through the curtains. It fell across his face. At that moment, I suddenly felt that everything had changed. Not because the past disappeared, not because all the wounds were instantly healed, but because we finally stood on the same side. After breakfast, we walked along the streets of Kunming. Shen Yanzhou took me to places he had visited during the past 4 months. A small bookstore, a quiet alley, a corner where an old man sold handmade crafts. Every place had a story, and every story had him alone in it. This is where I bought my first cup of tea after arriving here. This is where I got lost because I didn't know the road. This is where I saw the most beautiful sunset. I listened quietly. I didn't interrupt because I knew those 4 months were a part of his life, a part that I had missed. I wanted to know everything, not because I was afraid of losing him, but because I wanted to truly understand him. When we reached the edge of a small park, he stopped. This place, he pointed ahead. I came here many times. I looked around. There were trees, benches, and people walking with their families. What did you do here? He smiled. Nothing. Nothing? Yes. He sat down on the bench. Sometimes I just sat here for an hour, watching people pass by, thinking about what kind of life I wanted. I sat beside him. And what did you decide? He looked at the sky. I decided that I didn't want to spend my whole life being needed by everyone. I wanted to be loved. My fingers tightened around his hand. I love you, I said, very quietly, but very seriously. He looked at me. I know. Do you? Yes. How? He smiled. Because this time, you came to me. The wind gently passed through the trees. Leaves fell slowly around us. I looked at him and suddenly realized sometimes love was not proven by how much pain someone could endure. It was proven by whether two people were willing to walk toward each other again. This time, I was walking toward him, and he was finally allowing me to reach him. That afternoon, Shen Yanzhou took me to the place he had mentioned countless times, Kui Lake. The moment I stepped onto the path beside the lake, I understood why he loved this place. The lake was calm, reflecting the blue sky and drifting clouds. Willows swayed gently in the breeze. The sound of birds came from the branches, soft and distant. Everything here seemed peaceful, a kind of peace that I had never truly experienced. Shen Yanzhou walked slowly beside me. Beautiful, isn't it? I nodded. Very beautiful. He smiled. But when I first came here, I didn't think so. I turned to look at him. Why? Because I was alone. He looked at the lake. The scenery was beautiful, but I had no one to share it with. My heart tightened. He continued walking. I remember sitting in that tea house, watching couples walking by, watching families take pictures, watching people laugh together. At that time, I wondered, would I ever have that again? I lowered my eyes. Shen Yanzhou. I'm sorry. He stopped walking. Then he turned to me. Gu Zhaoning. Yes? I told you before. You don't need to apologize every time. But, he shook his head. I don't want you to only remember the things you did wrong. I looked at him. What should I remember then? He smiled. The things we will do right in the future. I was silent. Then I nodded. Okay. He pointed toward the tea house nearby. Come on. Where? To drink tea. I laughed. You really love that place. Yes. Why? He thought for a moment. Because it was the first place where I learned to be alone. His answer surprised me, but then he added, "And now it is the first place where I can bring you." We walked into the tea house. The owner recognized him immediately. "You're here again." Then the old man looked at me and smiled. "And this time, you brought someone." Shen Yanzhou smiled. "Yes." The owner looked between us. Then he nodded. "Good. Some people spend their whole lives searching. Some people find what they lost." He poured 2 cups of tea and placed them in front of us. "Take good care of each other." I looked at Shen Yanzhou. He looked at me. Neither of us spoke, but we both understood. After the tea was served, Shen Yanzhou took out his phone. "What are you doing?" "Taking a picture." "A picture?" "Yes." He raised his phone toward us. I was slightly surprised, because in the past 5 years, we had very few pictures together. Not because we didn't have opportunities, but because I was always too busy. Every time he suggested taking a photo, I would say, "Next time." And that next time never came. The camera flashed. The picture froze that moment. 2 people sitting beside Kui Lake. A cup of tea between them, hands quietly held together. I looked at the photo. Then I smiled. "Send it to me." He looked at me. "You want it?" "Yes." "Why?" I looked at him. "Because I want to keep every moment with you now." He was quiet. Then he sent it to me. A few seconds later, my phone received the message. I saved the photo immediately. Then I changed my phone wallpaper. Shen Yanzhou noticed. "You changed it?" "Yes." "What was your old wallpaper?" I hesitated. He laughed. "You forgot?" I smiled awkwardly. "It was the company's logo." He couldn't help laughing. "The company's logo?" "Yes." "Your phone wallpaper was your company?" I nodded. It reminded me to work harder. He shook his head helplessly. "Gu Zhaoning." You really were hopeless before." I laughed. "I know. But fortunately." I looked at him. "I still have time to change." His smile slowly faded into something softer. "Yes, you still have time." The sunlight outside the window moved slowly. The afternoon passed quietly. We talked about many things we had never discussed before. His favorite foods, the places he wanted to visit, the dreams he had given up, the things he wanted to try. I listened to every word. Sometimes I asked questions. Sometimes I laughed. Sometimes I felt my heart ache because I finally discovered there was an entire world inside Shen Yanzhou that I had never truly entered, and he had once opened the door for me. But I was too busy looking forward to notice. Now I wanted to walk inside, slowly, carefully, for the rest of my life. When we left Kui Lake, the sky was already turning orange. The sunset spread across the horizon, painting the clouds with a warm golden glow. Shen Yanzhou and I walked side by side along the lakeside path. Neither of us spoke, but the silence between us was no longer uncomfortable. It was a kind of quietness that only existed between 2 people who finally understood each other. After walking for a while, he suddenly stopped. "Gu Zhaoning." "Can I ask you something?" I turned to him. "What is it?" He looked at the lake. During those 4 months, I knew what he wanted to ask. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Did you ever think about me?" My heart tightened. I didn't answer immediately, because the answer was not as simple as yes or no. I thought about the countless nights after he left, the empty dining table, the silent apartment, the cup he always used, the coat still hanging by the door, the moments when I reached for my phone, wanting to tell him something, only to realize there was no one waiting on the other side anymore. Every day, I finally said. He looked at me. "Every day?" I nodded. "At first, I thought I was just angry. I thought I was angry because you left without giving me a chance to explain. But later I realized." I lowered my eyes. "I was afraid." "Afraid?" "Yes." I looked at him. "I was afraid that when I finally turned around, you would no longer be there." The wind passed between us. Shen Yanzhou remained silent. "I spent 5 years believing you would always wait. My confidence came from your love. But I forgot. Even the person who loves you the most can become tired." His eyes moved slightly. I continued. "When you left, I finally understood. The thing I feared losing the most wasn't my company. It wasn't my reputation. It wasn't anything I had built. It was you." He looked at me for a long time. Then he asked softly, "Then why did it take so long?" I froze. Because there was no excuse. No explanation could erase those 5 years. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe because I thought love was something stable, something that would always exist no matter what I did. A bitter smile appeared on my face. I was wrong. Love is not a building. It doesn't stay standing just because someone built it once. It needs someone to maintain it, someone to care for it, someone to come home. Shen Yanzhou looked down. Then he smiled faintly. You finally understand. Yes, I understand now. He was quiet for a while. Then he reached out and touched my head gently. Gu Zhaoning. Yes? You know what I'm happiest about? What? Not that you came to Kunming. Not that you want to bring me back. I looked at him. Then what? He smiled. That you finally saw me. Those simple words made my eyes burn because I knew exactly what they meant. For 5 years, he had stood beside me, but he had always felt invisible. He had supported my dreams, but no one asked about his. He had remembered every detail about me, but I had forgotten the simplest things about him. His favorite food, his dreams, his fears, his sadness. I stepped closer and held his hand. From now on, I looked at him seriously. I want to know everything about you. Everything? Everything. He raised an eyebrow. Even embarrassing things? I nodded. Even embarrassing things. Even the things you don't want to tell me? Especially those. He laughed. A real laugh. Not the gentle smile he always used to comfort others. Not the polite expression he showed the world. A genuine laugh from his heart. I stared at him and suddenly realized this was the Shen Yanzhou I had missed. The person who existed before disappointment changed him. The person who had always been there. We continued walking. The streetlights turned on one after another. The reflection of the lights danced on the surface of the lake. After a while, he asked, Gu Zhaoning. Yes? When we go back. I looked at him. What? Are you really ready? I knew what he meant. Going back didn't only mean returning to the city. It meant facing everything. The company, the employees, the people who knew he had left, the relationship that had been broken, the life we had abandoned. I took a deep breath. Yes. Are you sure? Yes. I held his hand tighter. But this time, I won't ask you to follow me. I will walk beside you. He looked at me, then slowly smiled. That sounds better. Goaded. 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 I don't know the things that I can't wick. I smiled. Because you taught me. What did I teach you? I looked at the road ahead. That love is not about one person waiting for another. It is about two people walking toward the same direction. The evening breeze carried the scent of flowers through the street. The city lights became brighter. And for the first time, the road ahead no longer felt like something I had to conquer. It felt like somewhere we would go together. The next morning, we bought our tickets back home. When I looked at the departure information on my phone, I felt a strange sense of calm. A few days ago, I had come to Kunming with only one thought in my mind. Find Shen Yanzhou. Bring him back. At that time, I thought the most important thing was convincing him to return. But now I understood. The most important thing was not bringing him back to my world. It was learning how to step into his. At the airport, Shen Yanzhou stood beside me, carrying his luggage. He looked much more relaxed than the day we first met here. The tiredness in his eyes had faded. The loneliness that once surrounded him seemed to have disappeared. Are you nervous? He suddenly asked. I looked at him. About what? Going back. I thought for a moment. A little. He smiled. I thought someone like you would never be nervous. I glanced at him. Someone like me? The famous Gu Zhaoning. The person who can negotiate billion-dollar contracts without changing her expression. I sighed. But I am also a person. He nodded. Good. Good? Yes. Because before, you always acted like you didn't need anyone. I lowered my head. That was probably the biggest misunderstanding of my life. What? I thought being strong meant carrying everything alone. I looked at him. But now I know. Sometimes letting someone stand beside you is also a kind of strength. He smiled. You really have changed. Is that surprising? A little. Why? Because I spent 5 years trying to tell you that. I looked at him. And you never listened. He said it jokingly, but I still felt a small ache in my heart. I'm sorry. He immediately shook his head. Don't say sorry. Then what should I say? He thought for a moment. Say thank you. I smiled. Thank you. For what? Thank you for waiting. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for giving me another chance." He looked at me quietly. Then he nodded. "You're welcome." The boarding announcement sounded. People around us began moving toward the gate. We followed the crowd. This time, I was not chasing after him. We were walking together. On the plane, I sat beside the window. Shen Yanzhou sat next to me. When the plane took off, the city of Kunming slowly became smaller beneath us. I looked down at the mountains and clouds. 4 months ago, he had left from the same airport, but his heart at that time must have been completely different. He had come here alone, carrying disappointment, carrying pain, carrying the decision to let go. And now, he was leaving with me, not because I forced him, not because he had nowhere else to go, but because he chose to. I turned to him. "Shen Yanzhou, can I ask you something?" "Yes." "When you left." He looked at me. "What? Did you ever regret it?" He was silent. After a while, he answered, "Yes." My heart tightened. He continued, "I regretted that I waited so long before leaving." I was stunned. Then he smiled slightly. "Not because I regret loving you. I never regretted that. I regretted that I forgot myself for too long." I looked at him. He looked out the window. Love should make people better. It shouldn't make someone disappear. Those words stayed in my heart because they were true. Before, I thought losing him meant losing the person who loved me. But now, I realized the person I almost lost was not only him, it was myself. A version of me who knew how to love. A version of me who knew how to care. A version of me who knew that success meant nothing if there was no one to share it with. The plane flew through the clouds. The sunlight outside was bright. Shen Yanzhou leaned back and closed his eyes. I quietly covered him with the blanket. This small movement made him open his eyes. "You don't have to do that." "I know." "Then why?" I smiled. "Because I want to." He looked at me. Then he smiled. A very small smile. But this time, I could see the happiness behind it. When we landed, my assistant Xiaowen was already waiting outside. The moment she saw us walking out together, she froze. Her eyes widened. "Gu Gu Zong?" I smiled. "Xiaowen." She looked at Shen Yanzhou, then looked back at me. For a few seconds, she didn't know what to say. Finally, she whispered, "Mr. Shen, you're back?" Shen Yanzhou smiled politely. "Yes." Xiaowen's eyes immediately became red. She quickly lowered her head. "Welcome back." Those simple words made Shen Yanzhou pause. Then he nodded. "Thank you." I looked at the scene in front of me. Suddenly, I realized something. It wasn't only me who had missed him. There were many people waiting for him to return. Because a person who truly cares for others always leaves traces behind. And Shen Yanzhou had left countless traces in the hearts of the people around him. When we returned to the company, everything seemed familiar. The same building, the same lobby, the same employees walking hurriedly through the halls. But somehow, everything felt different. Perhaps because I was different, or perhaps because this time, I was no longer walking ahead alone. Shen Yanzhou stood beside me. The moment we entered the office area, many people stopped. Surprise appeared on their faces. Some whispered quietly. Some looked at Shen Yanzhou with unconcealed excitement. After all, everyone knew he had resigned. Everyone knew he had left. And everyone knew why. I walked toward the conference room. Before entering, I stopped. Then I turned to him. "Are you ready?" He looked at me. "Are you?" I was slightly stunned. Then I smiled. "Yes." He nodded. "Then let's go." The conference room door opened. The executives were already waiting inside. When they saw Shen Yanzhou, the room became silent. One of the directors stood up. "Mr. Shen?" Shen Yanzhou smiled. "Long time no see." The director looked at me, then at him. Finally, he asked, "Are you returning to the company?" Everyone looked at him, waiting for his answer. In the past, I would have answered for him. I would have explained the arrangement. I would have announced the decision. I would have told everyone what would happen next. But this time, I remained silent, because this was his choice, not mine. Shen Yanzhou stepped forward. "I am returning." The room immediately became lively. But before anyone could say anything, he continued. "However, I have one condition." Everyone quieted down. He looked calm. "I will no longer serve as vice president." The room froze. Several people exchanged confused looks. "What? You are giving up the position? Mr. Shen? Why?" Shen Yanzhou looked at everyone. "I have thought about this carefully. My ability has never been managing people. My strength is projects, creating solutions, solving problems, building something from nothing. He paused. For the past few years, I accepted every responsibility because the company needed me. But from now on, I want to do what I am truly good at. No one spoke. I watched him quietly. At that moment, I suddenly understood. This was the real Shen Yanzhou, not the person who always stood behind me, not the person who sacrificed his own dreams for mine, but a person with his own ambitions, his own choices, his own future. The director frowned slightly. But Mr. Shen, your experience and ability. Shen Yanzhou smiled. Experience does not disappear because of a title, and ability is not measured only by a position. The room became quiet again. I looked at him. There was a confidence in his eyes that I had never seen before. Not the confidence of someone standing beside a powerful person, but the confidence of someone standing as himself. I suddenly felt proud, not because he was returning, but because he had finally found himself. After the meeting ended, everyone slowly left. Only Shen Yanzhou and I remained in the conference room. The sunlight entered through the glass windows. He looked at the city outside. "You don't regret it?" I asked. He turned around. "Regret what?" "Giving up the position." He smiled. "No. Why?" "Because this time I chose it myself." I was silent. Then I walked toward him. "Shen Yanzhou. I want to tell you something." "What?" "I am proud of you." He froze slightly. Perhaps those words were ordinary. But for someone who had spent years supporting me, maybe they were words he had waited a long time to hear. "You are proud of me?" "Yes." I nodded. "Not because you helped me, not because you saved the company, not because you sacrificed anything, but because you are you." His eyes moved slightly. For a moment, he looked away. Then he laughed softly. "Gu Zhaoning. Yes? You really know how to say things at unexpected times." I smiled. "Is that bad?" "No." He looked back at me. "It's good. Because before," he paused. "Before, I thought you would only notice my achievements. But now," he smiled. "Now you notice me." I reached out and held his hand. "Yes, I will. From now on, I will notice everything about you." He looked down at our hands, then gently squeezed mine. "Then I have a request." "What request?" "Don't make promises you cannot keep." I smiled. "I won't." "Why?" "Because this time, I won't just say it. I will prove it." He looked at me for a long time. Then he nodded. "Okay, I believe you." Outside the window, the city continued moving. Cars flowed through the streets. People rushed toward their destinations. Everything was the same as before. But inside this room, something had changed forever. For the first time in 5 years, we were no longer a boss and an employee, no longer a person chasing success and a person waiting behind. We were simply two people, standing together, choosing each other. He looked at me quietly for a long time before finally smiling. It was not a smile of relief, nor was it a smile of forgiveness. It was the smile of someone who had waited far too long for these words. "Gu Zhaoning," he said softly. "Do you know what I have been waiting for all these years?" I shook my head. He lowered his eyes, gently rubbing the edge of the teacup with his fingers. "I was not waiting for you to apologize." I froze. "I was not waiting for you to admit that you were wrong." His voice remained calm, but every word carried a quiet weight. "I was waiting for you to see me." My heart trembled. See him. Those simple words struck me harder than any accusation ever could. Because I suddenly realized that for the past 5 years, I had been looking at him every day. Yet I had never truly seen him. I saw him as my husband. I saw him as my assistant. I saw him as the person who would always stand beside me. But I had forgotten that before all those identities, he was simply Shen Yanzhou, a person with his own dreams, a person with his own emotions, a person who also wanted to be loved. "I'm sorry." The words came out quietly, not the apology I had repeated countless times in my mind. Not the apology filled with guilt, but a sincere apology from the deepest part of my heart. "I'm sorry, Shen Yanzhou. I spent 5 years asking you to understand me, but I never tried to understand you." The room fell silent. Outside the window, the wind passed gently over Kuei Lake, causing ripples to spread across the surface. He looked at me, his eyes slightly red. "Gu Zhaoning, I know you have suffered too." I interrupted him gently, "But suffering does not mean I was right." He remained silent. I always thought that because I was working hard, because I was carrying the company, because I was trying to build a better future, everything I did could be forgiven. I lowered my head, but I forgot that the person standing beside me also needed my care. The sunlight fell across the table, landing between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Shin Yanzhou reached out and placed his hand over mine. Actually, I was also wrong. I looked at him in surprise. You? He nodded. I should have told you earlier. His fingers tightened slightly. I should have told you that I was tired. I should have told you that I felt lonely. I should have told you that I didn't want to be the person who always waited. A bitter smile appeared on his face. But I kept telling myself that you were busy, that you had pressure, that you would notice me eventually. His voice became softer, so I waited. For 1 year, then another year, then another, until I realized. He looked out at the lake. I had become someone who only knew how to wait. My eyes burned. Why didn't you leave earlier? He was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled faintly. Because I loved you. The answer was simple, too simple, but it was the truth. I loved you, so I kept finding reasons to stay. He looked back at me. But love cannot only be one person giving. It cannot be one person walking forward while the other person keeps standing still. I held his hand tightly. I understand now. He looked at me. No. I shook my head. I may never fully understand everything you went through, but I will spend the rest of my life trying. A gentle breeze entered through the window. The tea on the table had already cooled, yet neither of us cared. After a long silence, he suddenly smiled. Gu Zhaoning. You know what is strange? What? For the past 4 months, I kept imagining what would happen if you came to find me. He looked down at our hands. I thought you might cry. I thought you might apologize. I thought you might ask me to come back. I asked softly, and what did you imagine I would say? He looked at me and smiled. I imagined you would say, Shin Yanzhou, come home with me. My eyes instantly became wet. Then why didn't you come back when I asked before? He lowered his gaze. Because before, I was going back as your employee. He paused. But now, his eyes met mine. I want to go back as your husband. The tears I had been holding finally fell. I lowered my head, covering my face. He reached out and gently pulled my hand away. Don't cry. I'm happy. I looked at him through blurred vision. Happy? Yes. He smiled. Because this is the first time I feel like you are crying because you finally found me. Not because you lost something. My heart ached. Because he was right. Before, I cried because I was afraid of losing him. Now, I cried because I finally understood him. The afternoon sunlight slowly moved across the floor. The tea house remained quiet. The world outside continued moving forward. But at that moment, sitting across from him, I felt as if the 5 years we had lost were slowly returning to us. Not disappearing, not being forgotten, but becoming something we could finally face together. Shin Yanzhou picked up his teacup and took a sip. Then he looked at me seriously. Gu Zhaoning. Yes? When we go back, there is something you need to remember. What? He smiled slightly. You are no longer the only person making decisions. I nodded. I know. You have to ask me. I will. You have to listen to me. I will. You cannot secretly work until midnight and pretend nothing happened. I froze. Then I looked away. He raised his eyebrows. See, you already want to avoid answering. I couldn't help but laugh. For the first time in a long time, our laughter felt natural, warm, like the old days. Like the two people we used to be. Only this time, we were no longer the same. Because we had both learned how to love each other. Not through sacrifice, not through endurance, but through understanding. He looked at me and said softly, Gu Zhaoning. Welcome back. I held his hand. No. I smiled through my tears. Shin Yanzhou. Welcome home. He stared at me for a moment, as if trying to confirm whether he had heard correctly. Then, slowly, a smile appeared on his face. A smile that carried a hint of surprise, a hint of helplessness, and a warmth that I had not seen for a long time. Welcome home. Those words echoed in my heart, because for the past 5 years, I had always believed that I was the one protecting our home. I thought I was the person carrying everything on my shoulders. I thought as long as I worked hard enough, as long as I built a successful company, as long as I created a better future, everything would be worth it. But I never realized that home was never just a place. Home was a person waiting for you. And that person had been waiting for me for 5 years. Shen Yanzhou. After we go back, will you still cook for me? He was slightly stunned. Then he laughed softly. Why? The famous President Gu suddenly wants to eat my cooking again? I lowered my head a little, feeling embarrassed. Is that not allowed? He looked at me for a few seconds, then shook his head. No. My heart sank slightly. But before I could say anything, he continued. Of course it is allowed. A smile appeared in his eyes. I was just wondering if you would finally say it tastes good this time. I froze. Then I laughed. I will. You promise? I promise. Even if it is too salty, I will say it is delicious. Even if it burns, I will say it is delicious. He looked at me helplessly. Gu Zhaoning, you are exaggerating. I smiled. No. I looked directly at him. I'm just making up for all the times I failed to say it before. His expression softened. After a while, he reached out and lightly tapped my forehead. Fool. I held his hand. Shen Yanzhou. Yes? Thank you. He looked at me quietly. For what? For waiting for me. For giving me another chance. For still choosing me after everything. He lowered his eyes, his fingers slowly intertwining with mine. Actually, he paused. I should thank you too. I was surprised. Thank me? Yes. He looked at the lake outside the window. Thank you for finally coming back. The afternoon passed quietly. We stayed at the tea house until the sun began to set. The golden light covered Kuei Lake, and the boats on the water slowly returned to shore. People walked along the lakeside, some laughing, some taking photos, some simply enjoying the peaceful evening. Shen Yanzhou and I walked side by side, just like countless times before, except this time, I was no longer walking ahead of him. And he was no longer silently following behind me. We walked at the same pace, our hands held tightly together. Where are we going now? I asked. He thought for a moment. Somewhere you should have gone a long time ago. Where? He smiled. You will know when we get there. He took me through the streets of Kunming. The city at night was completely different from the one I had seen when I first arrived. The cold anxiety I carried with me had disappeared. The streets were filled with warm lights. The air smelled faintly of flowers after the rain. We finally stopped in front of a small bookstore. I looked at the sign and was slightly surprised. A bookstore? He nodded. I used to come here often. When? After I left. My expression changed slightly. He noticed it and smiled. Don't worry. I did not come here because I was sad. I came here because I wanted to learn how to live alone. Those words made my heart tighten. How to live alone. He nodded. When I was with you, my world was always centered around you. I knew what you liked. I knew your schedule. I knew when you would come home late. But I forgot something. What? I forgot to know myself. He looked at the bookstore through the glass door. So after leaving, I started learning. Learning what books I liked. Learning where I wanted to go. Learning what kind of person I wanted to become. I looked at him quietly. At that moment, I suddenly realized something. The Shen Yanzhou standing before me was not the same man who left 4 months ago. He was still gentle, still kind, still the person who would silently take care of me. But he was no longer someone who existed only because of me. He had finally become himself. And somehow, that made me love him even more. Can we go inside? I asked. He smiled. Of course. The bookstore was small but warm. The shelves were filled with books, and soft music played quietly in the background. The owner looked up when he saw Shen Yanzhou. Back again? Shen Yanzhou nodded. Today I brought someone with me. The owner looked at me and smiled knowingly. Your wife? Shen Yanzhou paused for a moment. Then he looked at me. Yes, only one word. But my heart trembled. Because after 4 months apart, after all the pain and misunderstanding, he still introduced me as his wife. Not his ex-wife. Not someone from his past, but his wife. The owner smiled. Good. People who find their way back should cherish it. I looked down, unable to hide the tears in my eyes. Shen Yanzhou gently squeezed my hand. Why are you crying again? I shook my head. I don't know. He smiled. Then don't cry. Today should be a happy day. I looked at him. Yes, it is. Because after losing my way for 5 years, I finally found my way back home. We left the bookstore when the night had completely fallen. The streetlights stretched our shadows across the pavement, one long shadow beside another, no longer separated. Shin Yanzhou carried the books he had bought in one hand and held my hand with the other. Neither of us spoke much, but the silence between us was no longer awkward. It was peaceful, like two people who had finally returned to the same place after walking through countless detours. Gu Zhaoning. Are you tired? I shook my head. No. He looked at me suspiciously. You have been walking for hours. I'm not tired. Why? I thought for a moment. Then I smiled. Because I am walking with you. He lowered his eyes, hiding the smile at the corner of his lips. You really have changed. I looked at him. Is that a good thing? Yes. He answered without hesitation. It is the best change. The wind carried the scent of flowers through the street. Kunming at night was quiet and gentle. The city did not rush anyone. It allowed people to slow down and listen to their own hearts. We walked until we reached the entrance of a small hotel. I stopped. Are you staying here? He nodded. For the past 4 months, I looked at the building in front of me. It was not luxurious, not even close to the places I was used to staying in during business trips. But when I looked at his expression, I realized he had never complained. Why did you choose this place? He thought for a moment. Because it was close to the lake. Just because of that? Yes. He smiled faintly. I liked being able to walk there whenever I wanted. I lowered my eyes. I suddenly remembered how he used to choose houses according to my preferences. Near the company, near convenient transportation, near places that saved my time. But this time, he chose a place because he liked it, not because it was convenient for someone else. Shen Yanzhou. Have you been lonely? He became quiet. After a while, he answered honestly, yes. My heart tightened, but not anymore. He looked at me. Because you are here. I wanted to say something, but the words became stuck in my throat. He always did this. Even after everything, he still chose to comfort me first. Inside the hotel room, everything was simple. A small table, a small sofa, a few books beside the window, a kettle, a small plant on the balcony. I stood there quietly, looking around. This was the place where he had lived for 4 months. A place I had never known existed. A place where he woke up alone. A place where he ate alone. A place where he faced all those sleepless nights alone. Did you cry here? I asked suddenly. He looked at me in surprise. What? During those nights when you missed me. He was silent. Then he smiled. A few times. I turned away, trying to hide my tears. Why didn't you tell me? He looked at my back. Because what would I have said? I miss you. I'm hurting. I want you to come back. His voice was calm. But at that time, you had already made your choice. I closed my eyes. Those words hurt, not because they blamed me, but because they were true. I'm sorry. He walked over. Standing behind me, he gently placed his hand on my shoulder. Gu Zhaoning, don't keep apologizing. I turned around. Then what should I do? He looked into my eyes. Love me well. My breath stopped. Don't repay me because you feel guilty. Don't stay with me because you feel responsible. I don't want your pity. His fingers gently brushed away the tears on my face. I only want the Gu Zhaoning who truly wants to be with me. I looked at him. I do. I truly want to be with you. He smiled. I know. Because this time, you came here. The room became quiet. Outside the window, the lights of Kunming flickered in the distance. After a long time, I whispered, Shen Yanzhou. Yes? Can we start over? He looked at me. Start over? Yes. I held his hand. Not as President Gu and Vice President Shin. Not as the person who gives and the person who waits. Just as two ordinary people who love each other. He stared at me for a long time. Then he smiled. Okay, one word. Simple, but it felt like a promise. A promise that we would no longer lose each other. That night, we sat by the window and talked for a very long time. We talked about the past. We talked about the future. We talked about all the little things we had missed. And for the first time in 5 years, I discovered that talking to him could be so easy, so natural. Like breathing. Near midnight, he suddenly asked, Gu Zhaoning, if we had met again at the beginning. He paused. Would you still choose me? I looked at him. Without hesitation, I answered, yes. He smiled. Why? Because even at the beginning, you were the person who treated me the best. He lowered his eyes. But back then, you didn't know how to cherish me. I nodded. Yes, I was foolish. He looked at me. Then what about now? I smiled. Now I know. Know what? I held his hand tighter. Some people don't need you to chase the whole world. They only need you to turn around and see them. He looked at me quietly. Then he leaned closer and rested his forehead against mine. Gu Zhaoning. Thank you for turning around. My eyes slowly became wet. Thank you for still being there when I turned around. Outside the window, the night was quiet. The city lights shone softly. And after 5 years of missing each other, we finally stood face to face again. Not because one person waited forever, but because two people finally chose each other again. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of birds outside the window. For a moment, I was confused. The unfamiliar ceiling, the unfamiliar room, the unfamiliar city. Then I turned my head and saw Shen Yanzhou standing by the balcony, watering the small plant beside the window. The sunlight fell on his shoulders, outlining his figure with a warm golden glow. For a few seconds, I simply watched him quietly. It felt like a dream. A dream I was afraid would disappear once I opened my eyes. Perhaps sensing my gaze, he turned around. Awake? I nodded. When did you get up? Half an hour ago. Why didn't you wake me? He smiled. Because you were sleeping peacefully. I sat up slowly. When was the last time I slept this peacefully? He looked at me. Neither of us answered. Because we both knew. It had been a long time. I got out of bed and walked toward him. On the small table beside the balcony were 2 cups of coffee and a simple breakfast. I looked at the food and was slightly surprised. You made this? He nodded. Don't worry. I learned a few new recipes after coming here. I looked at him. New recipes? Yes. Why? He lowered his head and smiled. Because I realized I should learn things for myself too. But cooking was something I always liked. He handed me a cup of coffee. Before, I cooked because you needed someone to take care of you. Now, I cook because I enjoy it. I held the cup in my hands. The warmth slowly spread through my fingers. It was such a small thing. A simple breakfast, a cup of coffee, a quiet morning. But somehow, it felt more precious than all the expensive gifts I had ever received. Shen Yanzhou. Can I ask you something? Of course. During these 4 months, did you ever regret loving me? He stopped for a moment. The smile on his face slowly faded. He looked toward the distant city. After a long silence, he answered, Yes. My heart tightened. But before I could speak, he continued, I regretted that I loved you without loving myself. I froze. He looked back at me. I regretted that I kept giving everything away until I forgot I also deserved to be cared for. His voice was gentle, but I never regretted loving you. The sunlight moved across his face. I loved you for 5 years. That love was real, even though it hurt. I lowered my eyes. A deep ache spread through my chest because I knew the most painful thing in the world was not being unloved. It was being loved by someone you had failed to cherish. From now on, I looked at him. What? I want you to love yourself first. He smiled slightly. You are saying that now? Yes. Do you know how many times I wanted to hear those words before? I lowered my head. I know. No. He shook his head gently. You don't have to carry everything. You don't have to understand all my pain. You only need to remember one thing. What? His eyes met mine. We are partners, not one person saving another, not one person waiting for another. Partners. Those 2 words suddenly felt heavier than any promise. After breakfast, we walked through Kunming again. This time, he took me to the places he had visited during those 4 months. The flower market, the old streets, the lakeside paths. Every place carried a small piece of his memories. This is where I bought the flower cakes. He pointed at a small shop. I looked at the sign and smiled. The ones that got ruined by the rain? He nodded. Yes. I looked at him. Did you really eat 4 of them? He laughed. Yes. Why? Because I didn't want to waste them. I stared at him. You always do this. Do what? Even when you are sad, you still think about not wasting something. He smiled. Maybe because I know what it feels like to lose something precious. I was silent. Then I reached out and held his hand. This time, I was the one holding him. Not because he was about to leave, but because I wanted him to know he was no longer the only one trying. Shen Yanzhou. Yes? From now on, if you want something, tell me. Okay. If you are unhappy, tell me. Okay. If you feel tired, tell me. Okay. I looked at him seriously. And if you miss me? He raised his eyebrows. What? Tell me. A smile slowly appeared on his face. Would you come? Yes. Every time? Every time. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he laughed softly. Gu Zhaoning. You really changed. I smiled. Is that still a good thing? He held my hand tighter. Yes. The best thing. The wind passed through the streets of Kunming. The flowers beside the road swayed gently. And for the first time, I was no longer afraid of losing him because I finally understood. The person who truly loves you does not need you to become perfect. They only hope that one day you will finally turn around, see them, and choose them. That afternoon, we returned to the hotel to pack our things. Because the next morning, we would leave Kunming and return home. I stood beside the bed, folding clothes into my suitcase. Shen Yanzhou sat on the sofa, looking at me quietly. Why are you staring at me? I asked without turning around. He smiled. Nothing. Then why are you looking at me? Because I feel like this scene is very familiar. I stopped moving. What do you mean? He looked around the room. Before, whenever we traveled together, you were always the one packing, and I was always helping you organize everything. I smiled faintly. Yes. You always said I put things in the wrong places. You did. I turned around and glared at him. Shen Yanzhou. He immediately raised his hands in surrender. I'm just telling the truth. I couldn't help laughing. The sound of our laughter filled the small room. For a moment, it felt like we had gone back to the past. But then I realized something. The difference was that before, I laughed without knowing how precious those moments were. Now, every second felt like something I wanted to hold on to. After packing, we sat by the window. The sunset outside painted the entire city orange. Kunming looked peaceful under the evening light. Are you nervous? He suddenly asked. I turned to him. Nervous about what? Going back. I was silent, because he understood me too well. Yes, I was nervous. Not about the company. Not about the employees. Not about the problems waiting for me. I was nervous about returning to the place where all our pain had begun. The home where he once waited for me every night. The office where I had unknowingly hurt him. The memories we had tried to escape. A little. I admitted. He nodded. I understand. What about you? He thought for a moment. Me too. I was surprised. You were nervous too? Yes. Why? He looked down at his hands. Because going back means facing the old life. The life where I lost myself. I gently held his hand. But this time, it will be different. He looked at me. Why? Because this time, I will walk beside you. He was quiet. Then he smiled. Okay. The next morning, we arrived at Kunming Airport, the same place where I'd arrived 4 months ago. The same crowds. The same announcements. The same endless stream of people coming and going. But my feelings were completely different. Back then, I walked through this airport carrying fear. Fear that I would never see him again. Fear that I had already lost the most important person in my life. But today, I was walking beside him. His hand was holding mine, and I knew he was not leaving. We boarded the plane together. After the plane took off, I looked out of the window. The mountains and clouds slowly became smaller. Shen Yanzhou handed me a bottle of water. Still afraid of flying? I shook my head. No. You used to hold my hand every time during takeoff. I looked at him. Then you can hold my hand now. He smiled. You are asking me? Yes. Why? Because I want to. For a moment, he did not move. Then he slowly reached out and held my hand. His palm was still slightly cold, just like that night when he told me he could finally feel warmth again. I tightened my grip. This time, I would not let go. After several hours, the plane landed. The familiar city appeared before us. The city where our story had started. The city where we had loved. The city where we had hurt each other. Outside the airport, Xiaowen was waiting for us. The moment she saw Shen Yanzhou beside me, she froze. Mr. Shen. She looked at him, then at me. Her eyes immediately turned red. Are you really coming back? Shen Yanzhou smiled. Yes. Xiaowen looked at me. President Gu. I knew what she wanted to ask, so I answered first. He is not coming back as my assistant. She was stunned. Then as what? I looked at Shen Yanzhou. He looked back at me. I smiled. As my partner. Xiaowen was silent for a few seconds. Then she smiled. A relieved smile. Good. She wiped the corner of her eyes. Really good. On the way back, Xiaowen kept updating us about the company, the projects, The employees, the problems that had appeared during my absence. But this time, I did not immediately make decisions. I turned to Shen Yanzhou. What do you think? He was slightly surprised. Then he began analyzing the situation seriously. His voice was calm and professional, the same voice I had heard countless times before. Only now, I was finally listening. After Xiaowen finished explaining, she looked at us through the rearview mirror. A small smile appeared on her face. Perhaps she noticed it too. The biggest change was not that Shen Yanzhou came back. It was that I finally learned how to stand beside him. Not in front, not behind, but beside him. When we arrived at the company building, I looked up at the familiar skyscraper. For 5 years, I had thought this place represented everything I had achieved. But now I understood. A company could become bigger. A career could become more successful. But none of it mattered if the person beside you was slowly disappearing. I took a deep breath. Then I turned to Shen Yanzhou. Ready? He looked at the building, then looked at me. Yes. Together, we walked through the entrance. This time, we were not returning to the old life. We were beginning a new one. The moment we stepped into the company building, everything felt both familiar and unfamiliar. The same marble floor, the same bright lights, the same employees walking quickly through the lobby. But my mindset was completely different. Before, I walked through these doors alone. Everyone saw me as President Gu, the person who made decisions, the person who carried the company forward, the person who never made mistakes. But today, I walked in holding Shen Yanzhou's hand. And I no longer wanted to pretend that I could carry everything alone. The employees who saw us stopped one after another. Their eyes moved between Shen Yanzhou and me. Surprise, confusion, then slowly, relief. Because everyone in the company knew what had happened 4 months ago. They knew Shen Yanzhou had resigned. They knew he had left. They knew that the person who had stood beside me for 5 years had finally chosen to walk away. Mr. Shen, someone called out softly. Shen Yanzhou turned around. A young employee walked over. Welcome back. He smiled. Thank you. The employee hesitated for a moment before saying, We really missed having you here. Shen Yanzhou froze slightly. Then he nodded. I missed everyone too. I stood beside him quietly, listening to those simple words. And suddenly I realized something. He was never just my assistant, never just my vice president. He was someone deeply valued by everyone around him, someone who had quietly influenced many lives. We entered the elevator. Only the two of us were inside. The doors slowly closed. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Shen Yanzhou looked at the elevator numbers rising. Do you remember the first time we entered this elevator together? I thought for a moment, then smiled. Yes, that was the day I promoted you to vice president. He nodded. At that time, I thought I would spend my whole life helping you. I looked at him, and now, he turned to me. Now I want to build something together with you. The elevator reached the top floor. The doors opened. The familiar office appeared before us. My office. Our old battlefield, the place where countless arguments had happened, the place where he had waited for me until midnight countless times. I walked inside slowly. Everything was still the same. The desk, the documents, the chair, even the small coffee machine in the corner. I walked toward the shelf and saw a photo frame. It was a picture from 5 years ago, the day our company completed its first major project. Everyone was smiling. Shen Yanzhou stood beside me. His smile was brighter than mine. I picked up the photo frame. Do you remember this day? He walked over. Yes, you stayed in the office for 3 days. I smiled awkwardly. You remember? I remember everything about you. His answer was so natural that my heart tightened. I lowered the photo frame. Why? He looked at me. Because you were important to me. A simple sentence. But it carried the weight of 5 years. I placed the photo back. Then I turned to him. From today onward, this office needs to change. He raised his eyebrows. Change what? I walked to my desk. First, no more working until midnight. He smiled. Are you sure you can follow that rule? I nodded seriously. Yes. Second, all major decisions need to be discussed together. He nodded. Good. Third, I paused. He looked at me. What? I smiled. Third, you are not allowed to leave without telling me. For a moment, he was silent. Then his expression softened. Gu Zhaoning. I promise. His voice was gentle, but you also have to promise me something. What? Don't hold on to me because you are afraid of losing me. I froze. He continued, hold on to me because you choose me. I looked at him. After a few seconds, I nodded. I promise. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. Xiao Wen walked in with several documents. President Gu, Mr. Shen, the board meeting is ready. I looked at Shen Yanzhou. He looked back at me. Then we walked toward the meeting room together. The board members were already waiting inside. When we entered, everyone became quiet because everyone knew. This meeting was not just about work. It was about the future of the company and the future of the two people standing before them. I sat down. Then I looked at Shen Yanzhou. Please begin. Everyone was slightly surprised because in the past, I was always the first person to speak. But today, I chose to listen. Shen Yanzhou opened the documents. His expression became serious. The first thing I want to discuss is the North District project. His voice was steady, professional, confident. The person standing before everyone was no longer someone standing in my shadow. He was Shen Yanzhou, a person with his own ability, his own value, his own place. And for the first time, I felt proud, not because he belonged to me, but because he was himself. The meeting lasted for nearly 3 hours. During those 3 hours, I remained silent more than I had ever done before. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I finally understood that listening was also a form of respect. Shen Yanzhou stood in front of the screen, explaining the entire North District project in detail, his analysis, his plans, his concerns. Every word was clear and precise. The board members who had once questioned his decisions gradually became serious. They began taking notes. They began asking questions. They began seeing him not as the person standing behind President Gu, but as Shen Yanzhou, the person who had contributed to the company for 5 years. When the meeting ended, everyone slowly left the room. Only the two of us remained. I looked at the documents on the table. Then I looked at him. Shen Yanzhou, you were always this capable. He smiled faintly. Yes. Then why did I never realize it? He looked at me for a moment. Then he answered softly. Because you were always looking forward. I was stunned. Forward? Yes. He walked toward the window. You were always looking at the future, the next project, the next goal, the next achievement. His gaze fell on the city outside, so you forgot to look beside you. My fingers slowly tightened because I knew he was right. I had spent years chasing a future I thought was important, but I had forgotten that the person walking beside me was already part of the future I wanted. I'm sorry. He turned around. Gu Zhaoning. How many times have you apologized today? I thought about it. Then I lowered my head. Many. He sighed helplessly. You really need to change this habit. I looked at him. Why? Because I don't want to hear apologies every day. Then what do you want to hear? He walked closer. I want to hear what you truly think. I was quiet. Then I smiled. Okay, I'll try. He nodded. That's enough. After leaving the meeting room, we returned to the office. Xiao Wen was still there, organizing documents. When she saw us, she immediately stood up. How did the meeting go? Successful, I answered. But this time, I did not say it because I wanted to end the conversation. I looked at Shen Yanzhou. He handled it very well. Xiao Wen smiled. I knew he would. I looked at her. You knew? She nodded. President Gu, everyone knew. I froze. Everyone? Yes. Please, please. She placed the documents on the table. Everyone knew Mr. Shen was the person who understood this company best. I remained silent. She continued gently. For 5 years, whenever there was a problem, he was always the first person everyone went to. He solved problems. He helped employees. He protected the company when you were dealing with external negotiations. She looked at me. He never complained. My heart sank. Because once again, I realized how much I had missed. Xiao Wen hesitated before adding, actually, 4 months ago when Mr. Shen resigned, many employees were worried. Not because the company would collapse, but because they felt someone important had finally given up. The room became quiet. Shen Yanzhou lowered his eyes. Xiao Wen. She immediately stopped. Sorry. I shook my head. No, let her finish. Xiao Wen looked at me. Then she said softly, President Gu, I'm glad you went to find him. I looked at her. Why? Because before you left, everyone thought you would only chase after success. She smiled. But this time, you chased after someone. Those words stayed in my mind. Chased after someone. For the first time in my life, I chose a person over an achievement. Not because I had failed, but because I finally understood what truly mattered. After Xiaowin left, I stood by the window. The city below was busy as always. Cars moved. People walked. Everything continued. Are you happy? Shen Yanzhou suddenly asked. I turned around. Yes. Please, please? Really? Yes. Please, please? I looked at him. Because you came back. He smiled. But the company also changed. I nodded. Yes. Please, please? Before, I thought success meant standing at the highest place. I looked at the office. Now I think success means having someone beside me when I get there. He was silent. Then he walked toward me. Gu Zhaoning. Do you know what I thought when I first came back here today? What? He looked around the office. I thought I might feel uncomfortable because this place holds too many memories. I waited, but I didn't. Why? He looked at me. Because you were standing beside me. The afternoon sunlight entered through the glass window. It covered the entire office with a warm glow. At that moment, I knew. We had not erased the past. We had not forgotten the pain. But we had finally learned how to walk forward together.